What's up everybody, Mike with MT Aviation Photo and Film here, and welcome to episode 4 of the AvPod. We still have some really cool guests that I'm excited about, but unfortunately right now everyone is kind of busy wrapping up summer. So in today's episode we're going to take the time to kind of in-depth answer some of the frequently asked questions I get on my videos. So the first question I see kind of often is on my cabin tour videos, and that's, can you show certain things like the cockpit or the galley or this seat or that seat or the bathroom or how the windows align or the space under the seat, things like that. And to start, no, I'm not going to show certain things like the cockpit or the galley, because 90% of the people watching these cabin videos are looking at them to see what they're going to be flying on or to help them choose a seat. So like I said, like 90% of those people are only there for a specific reason, and they don't care to see the cockpit or the galleys or things like that. Now, the other things that are actually in the cabin, as far as like certain seats or certain things about the seats, if I were to start showing every little thing that everyone asked, these videos would become just so long. And like right now, I try and keep them short and sweet and don't talk through them, and a lot of people comment and appreciate the fact that it's just a general overview. So like I said, I'm not going to be adding stuff that people want to see. Like, my goal is to just do a general overview. So sorry if there is something specific you want to see, it's probably not going to happen. So the next question I get is also about the cabin videos. And there's a lot of people that always say, can you do one of like a certain airline and a certain aircraft? And these cabin videos are honestly like my channel's bread and butter. 17 out of 20 of my top viewed videos are all cabin videos. So I would love to show every cabin for every airline. But at the end of the day, like, I can only show cabins that I have access to. So for airlines that don't fly into where I work, like, I probably won't be able to get them, although I would love to. And the other thing with that, even if like an airline does come to where I work, that doesn't necessarily mean I have access to get into that plane. And also, like, the time might not allow it. Like, some of these planes that do come in are on like a 2-hour turn. So by the time it's cleared and cleaned, like, the plane is ready to go out again and about to start boarding. So I don't really necessarily, I'm not able to get everything, even of the planes I see. So when it comes to my cabin tour videos, and especially my cockpit videos, whether it's like takeoffs or landings or things like that, you'll notice in the description that I'll put some info, but a lot of information I will leave out, like the airline, the registration, or the flight number. And that's not because it's illegal or anything. The FAA published an info letter, it's 14006, that basically states if you're in the jump seat, you can take video because you're not acting as part of the flight crew. So again, nothing I'm doing is illegal or against company policy. But just kind of as a courtesy to the airlines or the company that are letting me do this, sometimes they just don't want that attention, so I leave stuff out like that. Tying in with the last topic as far as cabin tours and the cockpit videos, occasionally people will comment and be like, oh, this is this airline or this is this registration. Well, I just want to say that's absolutely pointless, because every video on my channel is set up for post approval, which means when you guys comment, before anyone else can see it, I have to approve it. So when I specifically say in videos, like, I'm not giving out the registration or the airline and stuff, and people read that and think, oh, I'm just going to comment it anyway, there is absolutely no point in that, because I am not going to be approving any comments like that. Other things that I don't approve are political stuff. Like, occasionally I'll get Air Force One or Air Force Two or political candidates, and it just kind of turns into an all-out war on people telling me how they feel about the certain candidates. That's not what my channel or my Facebook page are for. Like, I'll videotape Air Force One, but it's really about the airplane and not the person in it. So if you guys can't comment based off the aircraft and not your political views, then just please don't comment, because honestly, I'm not going to approve it anyway. So on top of that, the other reason I actually like post approval is, although I may not answer every single comment, post approval does force me to read every comment. And another thing I like about it is, like, on my other channel, I didn't have post approval on. Well, YouTube sometimes doesn't really notify you when you get a new comment or when someone replies to a comment. So you may have answered a question in a comment, but then someone will ask you a different question in the response, and you might never actually see that. So this way, it really forces me to read every comment and every response. So that's another big reason I keep it on. So another couple questions that I get asked a lot, and the first one, this is mainly on my Detroit plane spotting content, is how do I get to that spot? Which kind of ties into another question as far as on the cabin videos, which is how do I get onto that plane, or how do I get access? So to answer both those questions kind of at once, you probably can't. The reason I'm able to is because I work at the airport and I have a badge. Now, a lot of people ask me like what I do for work and that kind of thing, and I don't really like to give out my work-related details or my personal details. I like to keep everything separate from the MT Aviation brand, which consists of the YouTube and Facebook. But what I will say is that I work for an airline as an aircraft mechanic. That's about all the detail I'm willing to go into. And a lot of people think like, oh, I don't know why you don't just say. Well, there's kind of like weird people on the internet, and like one of my friends used to be a streamer, and somebody got mad at him one day and said they were going to call the airline that he worked for and tell them that he does drugs and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. So, like I said, there's kind of weird people out there, and I just like to keep my personal, my work, and my brand life all separate. So even though the people asking most likely can't actually get to these spots, I'm going to take this time now to kind of go over some of the different spots I actually spot at on the airport. So the first one we have is where a lot of my content comes from as far as heavy aircraft, and this is Detroit's UPAD. Now, this used to be the very end of the C terminal and a taxiway, but they eventually paved it and turned it into a parking pad, which is off taxiway uniform, which is why it is known as the UPAD. So this spot is pretty good for departures for 4 right and 2 left. And like I said, yeah, this is where a lot of my heavy content comes from, because most of the heavies use 4 right or 2 left. So another spot you'll see me use fairly often is located pretty much right at the 4 right de-ice pad, which is located on the other end of the B and C terminal from the UPAD. So this spot is basically right next to the 4 right end of 4 right 2 left. And this is kind of a cool spot when 3 right is closed, because a lot of the traffic that normally lands there will land on 4 right, and you're basically right by the touchdown zone. So this is one I kind of use quite often when operations are coming from the 3 or 4 side and 4 right is closed. So another spot you'll see me use kind of often, and this is for narrow body departures and sometimes wide bodies if they're charters or things like that coming from the FBO. And that is the spot I use for 2-1 right. Now there's a small service drive which is pretty much right on the border of the green lot, and there's a little sidewalk kind of pull off thing, and I like to sit there sometimes, and pretty much gives you some really up close action for planes departing 2-1 right. It's kind of okay for 3 left as well when they're coming the other direction. If it's a long roller or a heavy, you'll more or less get the rotation right in front of you, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, this is a spot I've been using for a very long time. So this next spot is one of the newer to me spots, and I recently discovered this earlier this year, and I'm just absolutely in love with this spot. So there's a service drive that leads to the 3 right de-ice pad, and on the corner of that is a little pull-off, which is where I like to sit and watch the traffic come in on 3 right. Now this spot is really good because a lot of the heavies come from Europe, which means they will favor 3 right because of the flow. So, like I said, I discovered this earlier this year and I have gotten some really good footage, a lot of which hasn't actually been published yet just because my posting schedule, but a lot of really cool stuff here because you're right by the touchdown zone on this one. So these last 2 spots are ones I don't use all that often. This first one, the conditions kind of have to be right in order for me to use it, and it's fairly far away. So this is the 2-2 left de-ice pad, which is pretty much right next to 2-2 left. Now, anytime something's landing on 2-2 left, this gives you a pretty good vantage point. So this is another case where when 2-1 left or 3 right is closed, a lot of the heavies will use 4 right or 2-2 left. So when they're coming in from the 2-2 left direction, this gives you a nice spot where you're fairly close to the touchdown point. But like I said, this is kind of a far drive and it's normally backlit, so it's not one I generally use. So this next spot is also another one I discovered earlier this year, and it is basically right off the backside of the fire station that is close to 9 left on the backside of the McNamara terminal. Now, again, this is kind of one of those spots where the conditions have to be just right in order for me to use, and mainly I see myself using this when there's a heavy that's going on 2-1 right and I can't quite make it to my 2-1 right spot in time. So this does offer some cool views because the heavies do tend to rotate fairly late and they kind of rotate right in front of you. But narrow bodies and stuff, this is kind of just, they're pretty high in the air by then. So this isn't a spot I generally use. So some of you may have noticed I haven't been posting many model unboxings lately, and that's because I pretty much have almost all the models I want except for a few. And the reason I collect the models I do are these are all aircraft I have worked on throughout my career. So when people ask me, are you gonna get this model that just came out? No, probably not, because there's a lot of planes that, like, if I haven't worked on it or had like that kind of connection with it, there's no point in me getting it. Like, I collect for a very specific reason. So this next question is something that Blake and I beat up pretty hard on episode 2 of the podcast, and that's, can I use your footage? The answer to that is no. My business makes money off of ad revenue and content sales. Me letting you use my footage for free is kind of hurting my brand. That would be like you walking into a store and saying, I know you guys sell bicycles, but can I just have one for free? Like I said, like, I do not allow others to use my content. I have worked very hard to go get that content. I understand it's like content that most people are unable to get, and that's why it is unique. But people re-uploading it takes away from the uniqueness. So no, you cannot use my footage. YouTube has a really nice copyright feature where it tells me when people do re-upload my videos. If you re-upload my stuff, I will copyright strike you. I'm sorry, but that's how it is, and that's how it's going to be. So to close out the podcast, I just wanted to talk about where I see this channel going. And I definitely won't be getting rid of any of the types of content that I'm currently posting, but I would like to be posting a little more of the narrated content. And a lot of those videos, like such as the AV News or the Aircraft Explained series, those are getting really good views and a lot of subscribers. And I think that's mostly in part just to the fact that I have access to a lot of like different technical data or like cool stuff like that that I can put in those videos. So I think that's why they do very well. So I have a lot of ideas for different projects, and some of them are even already written. Just the problem is a lot of them I'm waiting on like very specific footage, whether it's like of a certain thing or a certain aircraft or stuff like that. So if you guys are really into the narrated content that I do, there is a lot coming. So just stay tuned for that. So that'll end today's podcast. So thanks for listening.